Now, the last theory of learning that I want to talk about is observational learning. There are a lot of things that you can't learn through classical conditioning or operant conditioning or habituation. Um, for example, how do you build a house? How do you paint a beautiful painting? Um, how do you drive a car? You can't learn to drive a car by hitting pole after pole and then learning through punishments that you shouldn't do that. That doesn't make any sense. So instead, we learn through observing, um, and we call that observational learning. Um, now, observational learning is quite simple. There are a few things that must occur. First of all, whoever is learning, the animal or the person, has to be able to pay attention. And specifically, it has to be able to pay attention to the right things. Sometimes you pay attention, but because you're not paying attention to the right details, you don't really learn how to do it. Um, an example is maybe you're teaching someone how to do a sport and you're, I don't know, teaching them how to do a specific move and they're focusing on your leg movements, but not on your feet movements. And so every time they do it wrong because they're not paying attention to the right movement. Um, in nature, chimps can build tools, and they're simple tools. They'll take a branch, sort of take off all of the twigs and make it as straight as possible, and then they'll dip that branch into a termite mound, and they pull it out. That branch is full of termites, and they eat the termites, and they like it. They think it tastes spicy. Um, now, some places where there are chimps, there are also baboons. And baboons are smart, but not quite as smart. And so when baboons see chimps do this, they pay attention. They say, stick, termite mound, get food. But when the chimp leaves and they just drop the stick, the the baboon will come and pick up the stick, but instead of dipping the stick inside of the termite mound, they wave it over the termite mound. And obviously, that's not going to work. And they stare at the branch, and there's no termites. And they do it again, just wave it on top, and nothing happens. Because in this scenario, the baboon has paid attention to the wrong detail. Now, once you pay attention to it, you must also retain it. And we'll talk a little bit more about retaining it when we talk about memory next week. But retention just means you have to keep it inside of your mind. You'll have noticed this uh, probably in your math class or in your science class. As a teacher is describing the concept, you're like, "Yep, I got it. Yep, makes perfect sense." It totally makes perfect sense to you because you're paying attention to it. But when you get home, you didn't retain it. And now you're like, how do I do this problem? I totally understood it in class, but now I don't get it. Um, if you don't retain the information, then paying attention isn't going to help you out. But if you do pay attention, you do retain it, then the last thing is to reproduce it, to be able to do it physically with your body. Um, if I pay attention to basketball players dunking uh, basketball, I could pay perfect attention to all the right details and I can retain all the information just perfectly. But I still can't do it because I cannot reproduce the behavior. I'm a little too short, maybe a little too fat, and maybe my legs aren't strong enough. And so, even though I know everything that I have to do, I still cannot reproduce it because I can't do it physically, right? So long as you have those three, pay attention, retain it, and have the ability to reproduce it physically, then you can learn through observational learning. Now, I want to talk a little bit here about something that we call vicarious reinforcement. In normal operant conditioning, If you do a behavior and you get rewarded, that increases your behavior. And if you do a behavior and you get punished, then that decreases the behavior. But in observational learning, we can also reinforce or punish behaviors, not by punishing you, but by punishing somebody else or by rewarding somebody else. So you see some kids climbing over a fence and they get to the park faster. And that's a reward. They got to the park faster. And so you go, hey, I want that same reward. And so you do the same thing. But if you see those kids climbing the fence and getting in trouble, then you're going to say, I'm not going to do that, right? I don't want to get in trouble. So you're learning vicariously through other people. I used to teach martial arts when I was younger, usually to like middle schoolers. And every once in a while, they do some trick, just like a cartwheel. And I would say to the kid, hey, kid, great cartwheel. That's exactly what I want. And then 20 more kids came rapid fire. Look at my cartwheel. Look at my cartwheel. Look at my cartwheel. Because they saw the first kid get a reward and they want the same reward. Again, we see it with animals. There is a uh, aquarium in Britain, and in this aquarium, one of the dolphins learned a cool trick. It learned how to blow a bubble from its blowhole, but instead of just looking like a bubble, it looked like a ring, a perfect ring bubble. And of course, the humans went crazy. They rewarded the dolphin every time he did the bubble trick with a ring trick. And so what happened? All the other dolphins wanted the treats too. And so what did they do? They all learned how to do the ring trick with their blowhole because they said, hey, that guy is getting a reward. If I want the reward, I should do that too. And sure enough, that worked. Now, let me make one last point here with a similarity in role models. Um, a lot of times we see someone do something and we don't think, if I do that, I'll get a reward too. But then sometimes you do see somebody do something and you think, hey, if that person did it, I could do it too. And usually the difference there is how similar the model is to you. If it's someone that you consider to be very similar to you, there's a good chance that you'll think, if he did it or if she did it, I can do it too. But if the model is too different, then you might think, yeah, those people get a reward for that, but I'm not going to get a reward for that. I might even get punished for that. And so you don't do the behavior. Now, this can be very obvious, right? You see a bear slapping salmon out of a river, and you're not going to think to yourself, hey, maybe I should stand in that river and slap some salmon. No, because you're not a bear. That model is too different from you. But if you see someone like you, I don't know, singing a karaoke or something, and you might go, hey, that person is like me. If they did it, I can do it too. Um, Now, the most obvious similarities that we pay attention to are things like race and gender, maybe someone who comes from a similar town than you. But of course, those aren't the only similarities that we take into account. Maybe it's just someone who thinks like you or who has a similar taste in style or similar taste in video games or something like that, right? You're just looking for a similarity. But of course, the most obvious ones are gender and race. And so it's why a lot of times schools and organizations try to represent different genders and different ethnicities so that some kid, some fifth grader who, you know, is looking over that website or is watching a video goes, hey, that person is a scientist and that person looks like me. Hey, that person is, I don't know, a politician and that person looks like me. And that would increase their desire to try to do those behaviors. Okay. All right, guys, this is the last video for chapter 6. Again, Keep me posted. If you feel stuck, send me an email or come see me during one of the Zoom meetings. Have a wonderful week, and I hope to hear from you soon.